On tonight's episode of the Mike Pressler Show, we break down the Bulldogs' loss to Robert Morris, we preview their semifinal game against Quinnipiac, and we also preview the rest of the field for the NEC tournament. It's all here next on the Mike Pressler Show on Cox Sports Television. A bit of a tough week with the loss to Robert Morris, but we will start with some good news as long stick midfielder Mason Poley named one of the 25 semifinalists for the Twarton Trophy just past week. Great news for him.
Remarkable honor for Mason, well deserved. I put Mason right up there with some of the best defensive players in the country, and what makes Mason a little bit different, not only is his great defense, but his offensive skills. I think he's 19-7. 19 goals, 7 assists on the year, incredible numbers, and outstanding on the face-off wing, and certainly brings great notoriety to our Bryant program.
Absolutely, and he certainly comes up with big plays at big times in games as well. Also, you guys remain in the media poll receiving votes, even though you dropped out of the top 20 there. So we take a look at this game last weekend at Robert Morris. Long journey to get out to Pittsburgh. You wind up losing 13-12. It drops your overall record now to 12-4, 4-1 in NEC play. However, it helped them clinch the NEC regular season title, and perhaps more importantly, allowed them the rights to host this year's NEC tournament. How tough was this loss, considering you were just one goal short of hosting the tournament here in Smithfield? It
was as tough a game as we've had all year. I've said it many times. Robert Morris offensively I think, is the best team in the country. They're great on offense. They come at you in transition. They're great off the face-off. Kevin Master, that was a battle there, and they create offense off the face-off. They got some veteran guys, some of these Canadians that are just so skilled, so crafty around the goal. And what they do is that when you make a mistake defensively, they make you pay. I mean, you got to have your stuff wired tight. We made some critical mistakes in the sub game, some critical mistakes off the face-off, a couple mistakes in the zone, and one little mishap on our part, and the ball was in the back of the cage, and that was what the game was. And it was a game of runs. 5-2 them, 6-1 us, 5-1 them, and then we battled to the end and scored under a minute to go and just couldn't tie it.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it being a game of runs. They basically won the first and third quarter, outscoring you there. You guys took the second and the fourth. You were tied 11-11 midway through the fourth, and then they outscored you 2-1 down the stretch. Let's take a look at some of the highlights now from that game against Robert Morris.
Just a lot of goals both ways. Matt Larson doing a great job individually on defense. Colin Dunster, extra man. I think we were 2 for 4 extra man. Coming up the hash, Travis Harrington left-handed.
Assist going to Bo Redpath on that one.
Great save by Jay. I mean, Jamieson was outstanding. Alex Sommerfeld in that second quarter.
That made it 5-3 Robert Morris at the time. Max Wiesenberg, that time from Dunster.
And we got over the top a little bit. And Matt McGrady doing a great job getting out over the top from coast defense to Peter McMahon. Kevin Massa on the break here to Mason Poley.
Feel like we get at least one of those per game?
Yeah, they're a pair. Very, very tough on offense when we win the face-off. Mason again, great pass by Colin Dunster. I think those are back-to-back, as I remember.
They absolutely were. 3 minutes apart exactly in the second quarter.
Great look, one more to Max Wiesenberg to Alex Sommerfeld.
And that gave you guys an 8-6 lead at the half.
Cody Isdaner, we battled back to tie it in the fourth. Could never get the lead in the fourth. Just kind of battled from that 1-goal deficit 2 at the end.
You guys did fight back there. There was a goal from Colin Dunster. This is the final minute of play.
Yeah, we're just trying so hard. Great, get one more from Cody to Travis there, and cuts us within one, and had some chances at the end. And the game ended with the ball on offense at our end.
Yeah.
We had 2 chances with Colin Dunster and just couldn't find a way to score.
Well, you called it last week. You said if it got into the teens, it would favor them. They got to 13 exactly, and that's kind of what did you guys in. So you look at the game as a whole now. 7 different goal scorers. You guys were led by Colin Dunster, 2 goals, 2 assists. Travis Harrington had a hat trick. Sommerfeld, 2 goals and assists. Max Wiesenberg, a goal and 2 assists. So a lot of production out of the first units in the attack and the midfield. Love came up big, 14 saves on 27 shots, good for 52% save percentage. And the ground ball battle, though, you guys wound up losing that one. You're still number 1 in the nation, but you lost that one 39-35. And also a big factor coming into the game, you mentioned faceoffs. You guys wind up being 14 of 29, so under 50% for the day was Massa, as he was edged by Michael Gross, who's a top faceoff man for Robert Morris. However, positive stuff, man up 2 for 4. You didn't take a penalty in the game, so you got to be pretty happy with your defense for that as well. However, you guys were outshot 46-38. When you take all that into consideration, what were you most pleased with in that game?
Our resiliency. We never lost the faith. I mean, down 5-2, we came back. Down 2 at the end, we came back and continued to battle. So, we're not bulldogs for nothing. And we showed a lot of bulldog, a lot of heart, and just came up a couple plays short. But to beat a top team like Robert Morris on the road, a long trip to Pittsburgh, you just can't be making these mental mistakes defensively. Right. And that was something we harped on all week, trying just to clean up our act down there. And they're so talented. They're an exciting team to watch, actually. Yep. If you're a fan and you want to see some great offensive lacrosse, go down to Joe Walton Stadium and watch those guys play. They're terrific.
Yep. Now, you look at that game again, and you talked about the long trip down to Pittsburgh. How much of an impact do you think that had on the performance of your team?
Well, I don't think that was the case. We flew, so it wasn't a bus trip. Yeah. Flew out of Boston, had a great flight out of Boston, got there a day early, did our normal routine. So I don't think that was much of an issue for us. It was just, again, just some blunders, as I call it, at some key times. And, we turned the ball over on offense, and a couple bad turnovers. Yeah. It came all the way back down to bite us. And I can't emphasize that point enough. And they're a veteran team. Yeah. I mean, they got some guys, Maltese, number 16, Buchanan, 19. A couple of those attackmen are just a handful. And I expected our offense just to play better. I mean, we had to win a shootout, and winning a shootout favors Robert Morris.
Yeah, I mean, they were the number 1 team on offense coming into the game, averaging 14.4 goals per game. Now you held them below that, and you even held Matisse to just 2 points on 2 goals for the day, and he was number 4 in the nation in points per game. However, Jake Hayes seemed to have a big game. He came up with 3 goals and 3 assists, so it really seemed like they just had too much offensive firepower throughout that game, although your defense did play well.
We played well at times in spurts. It was a game of spurts, and when they make their run, they're impressive. But one thing when you play Robert Morris, if they make their run, you're going to get your run in return. Right. And because they play one style the entire way, and then they do turn it over, you're going to get your shots in transition, and we certainly capitalized, as you saw in the highlights, on a bunch of those.
Yeah. So now, putting that game behind us a little bit now, let's talk about your team a little bit here. Offensively, right now, you're averaging just under 12 goals per game at 11.81, which is number 2 in the NEC and 11th nationally. You've got very balanced scoring, though. There hasn't been one dominating guy out there, as you have 8 different players with 20-plus points. Peter McMahon leading the way, 21 goals, 23 assists, and Colin Dunster, 31 goals and 12 assists. What do you think's been the recipe for that success this season on the offensive end?
I think it's the credit goes to Coach Brad Ross. The second year of his offensive scheme, the way he brought in a whole new thing in the half field, and it's really been successful. The guy's got a great handle on it. What he does on the extra man end, and then we continue to attack and transition, i.e. Mason Poley and some of the DMs. And when Mass is doing his thing, like in the second quarter when we're in our face-offs, we're much better on offense.
Right. And now defensively, you're averaging 7.72 goals against, which is number 1 in the NEC and number 10 nationally. A lot of that credit's got to go to Jamison Love, who has a 7.67 goals against average. But one of the guys that might be overlooked a bit is Glenn Myrano, one of your defensemen back there. 31 caused turnovers, which is 13th nationally. Can you talk about him a little bit?
Glenn also had 7 grounders from the close defense, of 7 ground balls in the Robert Morris game. Glenn has great range. He's really long. He's 6'3", great wingspan. He can play you from a distance, so he doesn't have to necessarily body you up. He can play you on the end of your stick. And Glenn's got a great feel for the caused turnover. A great poke check, a nugget as we call it, an intercepted pass. And I just think that Glenn Myrano's had an All-American year, certainly an All-Conference year, and maybe an All-American year.
Absolutely. And now 2 other areas, ground balls, face-offs. Kevin Massa, number 1 in the NEC, number 3 nationally in ground balls, averaging 7.81 per game. Of course, many of those coming off the face-offs, but still tremendous work out of him. And as a team, 62.8% on face-offs, and that ranks number 1 in the NEC and number 2 nationally. So fantastic things out of Kevin Massa all season long. We don't really need to hit upon it more here, just wanted to bring it up. to give them some more credit. So that does it for this portion of the Mike Pressler Show. When we return, we'll break down the Bulldogs' upcoming semifinal game against Quinnipiac this weekend in the NEC tournament.